Keep it up. Are we good? Okay, drop it down a bit more. Drop it down a bit more. Excellent. Yeah, I can take some of the weight. Is it quite
Once the wind gets over.
We can get some stills on there as well. Is that comfortable?
Face on.
If you're happy to walk slightly faster, we can do that. Sorry?
Well, I'm going with you, Dad, right?
Thank you.
due respect.
All right.
Get on with the best you can. Actually, this is what I'm missing.
They've run away with each other. All right. I was on my own now, wife's at home. Gables.
God,
I'd literally,
we knew, well, he didn't know we were taking a video, but he said there was a group of kids, so I think it was maybe the one.
Somebody's lost in the shed at the garage. They're rotting away.
yes, yeah, part of that party that we're going in afterwards. Yeah, I think, again, the guys will confirm, but it wasn't unusual for the senior people to go in after an event to kind of figure things out. The wind's better here, isn't it? The curves work. No, it's fantastic. It's good. Negotiate the gate and the narrowing. So, how would you like to do this? It might be easy to take it up pause here, we'll let everybody come forward a bit, forward a bit. And then we'll let everybody catch up and walk in together. Well done, thank you.
Well done, guys.
Well done.
Well done.
So if you just come over to the left a bit, away from the puddles. We're ready for the crowd behind us.
Is there anybody from the television asked for somebody to send footage in?
Order TV, I think, and I think.
So are
White
you
Seven-
sending that in? Or is
I
somebody
don't
else
know.
doing
I
it?
think White Seven News are supposed to be here.
You need to look at the old photos because I say that the ribbons, the steers need to be put back on there. Let me take you out of that.
Look at that.
Okay.
You remember me, Dad, later, don't you?
Yeah. I do. Nice to see you, Zia.
I know. I fixed his tent.
Yeah.
That was my dad's.
But that is the original. That is the original.
Is it though?
thank you, and welcome to the second part of this service of reflection. Here, underneath this magnificent building, as a reminder to our heritage. First of all, I'd like to invite John Brown to continue his story and tell us a little bit more about Haig Pit. Thank you, John.
Right, well, Haig, the idea for it came about following the 1910 Wellington disaster. It was realised that ventilation at Wellington was totally inadequate, and at that time they were busy driving a couple of drifts to the south into an area of coal between Wellington and Croft Pits. Originally, the idea came up about 1912 was to sink two new pits, one here and one on St. Bay's Head to replace Ladysmith. The shafts were originally supposed to be over there, almost where the rugby field is. That was based on finding coal in Wellington, which they thought was the main band, but was actually the bannock. So they had to go a little bit further south to get into it, so the shaft positions were moved here. They said two shafts, number 4, number 5. Why? Because it's Wellington Pit. 1, 2 and 3 are down there. The idea was to sink these shafts and progress out, meet the workings from Wellington, and then carry on going for miles out to sea, connecting the two pits together and working them alongside each other. Great idea if it had worked. So they sank the shafts 1914 to 16, 1916, 1918, and started to drive 2 stone drifts heading out west. First coal came up from the 6 quarters, December 1919. It was round about that time that they decided to rename number 5 pit as Haig Pit, obviously commemorating General Haig. A little while later, they reached the little main seam, about 800 yards from the shaft bottom, and that was the initial working. In 1922, the road from number 5 shaft met a roadway coming back from the Wellington Pit workings, and that was the first connection, July 1922. For the next 10 years, the two pits would work together. Common ventilation system, men moving in between the two pits. As we remembered round there, the 20s wasn't a particularly happy time with series of explosions. 1931, there was another. And by 1932, the Whitehaven Colliery Company Limited gone into liquidation, surrendered the lease, which was then taken up that year by Priestman's, a North Eastern company. The first thing they did was drive a couple of miles of roadways underground, reopened the old Thwaite shaft, which you would pass as you came in through the gate behind that half wheel, and converted that shaft, which had been used only for ventilation as the upcast with a fan on the top of it. They converted that into the coal winding shaft. The big engine in there had been put in 1920 and did nothing for 12 years. All the coal was coming up this shaft. 1935, it seemed trading conditions weren't particularly good, the money that had been spent by priestmen trying to knock some shape into this place ended up with them having to pull out. October 1935, Haig and William Pitts closed, didn't reopen until March 1937. The following year, as I mentioned round there, Coltness Iron Company, who'd taken the place on then, broke through the stoppings in the Sale district and started to progress westwards. 1941-42, another significant step in development of Haig. 2.5 miles west of here, at 4 South, the biggest fan in the country was installed underground, 10 feet diameter booster fan to improve ventilation. They also drove a few more miles of airways, which ended up with this pit having, at that time, 2 main intake airways, 4 returns. Ventilation was 2 upcasts, Thwaite and number 3 shaft at Wellington. 1941, Thwaite shaft was enlarged so they could turn the fan off at Wellington, and that's how things virtually stayed after that. Also, a high-speed man rider was installed. That's one of the carriages over there, rusting away on the grass. That would carry 144 men in at 15 miles an hour. Very, very significant. Saved a lot of walking. And then by the end of the 40s, of course, we had nationalisation. 1950s, a pioneer in methane drainage. Boreholes were drilled from working places up and down to the adjacent seams. The gas tapped, came through a 14-inch diameter pipeline up the Thwaite shaft, and a lot of it was burned in the boilers which used to stand down the back, saving hundreds of tons of coal a week to raise steam. Later in the 50s, instead of the tub haulage all the way out, a cable belt and other belts were installed. Eventually, everything was coming out by conveyors, and the only time tubs were used was at the pit bottom, loaded into the tubs and fetched them 4 at a time up that shaft. Things seem to be going well. 1968, record output. We're progressing westwards in 2 seams, main band, upper metal band, and then we got into the 70s. Westward development was stopped in those 2 seams, and the powers that be decided our future lay in what we referred to as the south side. South developments going down towards St. Bees Head. It was cautioned against, that was known that it was a heavily faulted area down there. There was talks about putting all the eggs in one basket, but that was, oh, poo-poo, it'll work out, it'll be fine. So eventually, decisions were made that we'll go for the south side. The main band and upper metal band districts worked to a close, and we got very little in the south side. Although there was a time just round about then that we almost reached the record output again, and we're told, oh, Haig's turned the corner. We'll put some investment in. Took the tubs out of that shaft, put skips in, raised 6 tons at a time, 50% increase in output. The only thing is we're rapidly running out of anything to put in them. And then in 1984, that's really when things went down the pan. We had one face that was working it had effectively cut off any further development using the main roadways. A little bit of roof control problems, and they turned round and said that that was it. Ceased production in July 84. We're going to a 2-year development programme, open out this big, massive field off St. Bees Head. Thing was, we went down there and fault after fault, and we never reached El Dorado. So by the end of 1985, that was it. It was decided that everybody had given of their best, but there was no future, and that was the end of Haig Pit. It could have worked on for a lot longer, if only they hadn't decided to block all the western developments off. There's a lot of coal remains out there. When the pit was nationalised, they said there was enough coal going out 10 miles out to sea, would have lasted for almost 1,000 years at 800,000 tonnes a year. Got nowhere near that. So, but again, we've remembered all the people who died in this and other pits. But we've got to remember there were many thousands more men and women who came to this place, worked here, survived, enjoyed working here. It wasn't all doom and gloom. There was a comradeship amongst everybody that worked here. Something that we lost.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. And that's a beautiful point to leave your story and that information about Haig. It is so fascinating. Dave Craddock, if you can come forward. And part of that story, part of that joy, that camaraderie, and all the positive things that came out of this place, the opportunities and hope it gave people, in spite of it being such a difficult place to work, I'm sure Dave will give us some reflections of those.
This place where we're standing here was number 4 shaft. It's right, I'm standing right on top of it now. As a young man of 18, I came to this pit. My family didn't want me to go down the pit at all because my uncle was killed in the William Pitt explosion in 1947. But the lure of better wages got me here. And in April in 1964, I arrived at Haig Pit. At the end of the building just behind you there was the lamp cabin. There were no orange uniforms like our boiler suits like Richard's wearing today. You just wore old clothes. They gave you a pair of boots with steel toe caps, a helmet, and they said you need a belt, a good belt for your battery, for your lamp. So I arrived and I came over not knowing what I was going to see. And they put me with the ventilation engineer for what they called 20 days improvementship. He led me over here, we were going down the pit. The lamp cabin, as I say, was just at the end of that stone building there. They gave me a lamp, a cap lamp, number 1149. It's a number I'll never forget. I've no doubt many of the miners here will never forget the numbers. And we came out of that building and came round into the tops. This was all a covered area. It wasn't a proper building, but it was a covered area. The first thing I was met with was that shaft there. We came past that shaft there. Every minute or so, a cage would come up and four full tubs of coal would come flying out, and they would race towards that wall in free fall. They were pushed out by empties at the back, and it seemed as though they were going to come towards you and crush you. There was steam flying everywhere. There was 2 big creeper chains that took the coal up to the screens. The place was noise. It frightened the life out of you. Now, as these tubs came towards you, they made a sudden turn and went out the building, and then it turned again and went out there. And then we came up a few steps and came round here, and this was an area of calm. There you could reflect on what was going on. And I always remember the engineer said, go and have a look down the shaft here. It's 1,200 feet deep. So I came over and there was a fence here, and I looked over and went, oh, I could just see a wee light at the bottom, just a small light. So we got then into that, you see behind you there's a big steel structure there standing. That was one of the original cages for number 4 shaft. There were 2 of them. And we got into them, 2 abreast, 10 each side, 20 men to go down the pit. And that was my first exploration to underground. 20 years later, I was still there, and I was still in the ventilation department. I didn't make it to anywhere else. I was sort of stuck. Anyway, those are my reflections. It was the best job I ever had. The best people I ever met in my life were employed down there. And we were out there 3 miles and then 2 miles down towards St. Bees Head. And I've got a picture to prove it. Anyway, that's my reflections of it.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. It's wonderful to hear those first-hand stories. And we will hear one of Dave's poems very shortly. John Rule will offer us a reading next.
What I've got to say, I have never been down a mine.